The Uvalde shooting response trial has started this week, and that was starting today with jury selection. So let's get into the details about what happened today and what's expected to happen for the rest of the week. So the search for who is going to be on the jury in the case against former Uvalde CISD officer Adrian Gonzalez started this afternoon and finished just before 8 p.m., where they selected 12 jurors and 4 alternate jurors. At least 450 prospective jurors were summoned to the county courthouse in Corpus Christi for jury selection. Now, it had been stated that this was a much higher number for potential jurors due to the significance of this case and how obviously widely known it is, and their ultimate concerns for being able to find impartial jurors who could listen to all the facts and make decisions. So Adrian Gonzalez, who is shown here, is facing 29 counts of child endangerment, and he was one of the very first law enforcement officers to respond to Robb Elementary School campus on May 24th, 2022. The 18-year-old gunman had killed 19 children and 2 teachers in the deadliest school shooting in Texas history. And as you can see, I tried to move myself out of the way here because I wanted to make sure that all the children's faces and the 2 teachers were able to be shown on screen. There were also 10 children who were injured in the attack. So the 29 children that were unalived or injured in the shooting response represent Gonzalez's 29 child endangerment charges. The judge who's presiding over the trial was upfront and understanding in a statement to the jury pool on Monday, saying, quote, "I'm sure there is literally nobody in the courtroom who hasn't heard about this case." Upon arrival to the courthouse, the prospective jurors were tasked with answering a 2-page questionnaire upon their arrival in Corpus Christi, and there was a copy of the questionnaire that made it to the press. Some of the questions asked about their general impressions of Adrian Gonzalez and law enforcement's response to the shooting at Robb Elementary. By Monday afternoon, every single juror had confirmed that they heard about the 2022 shooting, and some of them grew upset in court. Quote, "I could have been that teacher waiting for help, scared," one member of the potential jury pool said. "The cops did nothing. It makes me biased." Another potential juror described themselves as a teacher, saying, quote, "I am a teacher, and that would affect me listening to the facts. My mind is made up." At approximately 3:45 p.m., only 150 members of the potential jury pool were dismissed. The Uvalde County District Attorney, Christina Mitchell, is prosecuting the case, but she appointed Bill Turner as a special prosecutor. Turner was a former district attorney in Brazos County. Adrian Gonzalez's defense team is led by San Antonio area attorney and former Bexar County District Attorney Nico LaHood. The state's expected to call approximately 60 witnesses to the stand, and court records indicate that some of those asked to be witnesses include the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office, officers from other responding law enforcement agencies, medical personnel, and some parents of the school shooting victims. The child endangerment charges are considered a state jail felony, and upon a potential conviction, Gonzalez could be sentenced between 6 months and 2 years in a state jail. If he's convicted, Gonzalez also asked for the judge to determine his sentence instead of the jury. The trial will officially be starting tomorrow, and the judge has estimated that it should take about 2 weeks. The judge also emphasized that jurors could fairly decide the case even if they were familiar with the allegations, as long as they were willing to set aside their pre-existing knowledge of the case. Here's what the prosecutors allege in this case. They say that Gonzalez, one of the first of nearly 400 officers to respond to the rampage, failed to engage the shooter despite knowing his location, having time to respond and being trained to handle active shooters. It ultimately took 77 minutes for law enforcement to mount a counter-assault that would unalive the gunman. Ever since the shooting tore apart Uvalde on May 24th, 2022, families of the victims have been seeking accountability and answers. Many of them have argued that their children might have been saved had police confronted the gunman more quickly. The gunman, Salvador Ramos, 18, acted alone and was killed on site at Robb Elementary School. This trial is marking a rare instance where a prosecutor is seeking to convict a member of law enforcement for their response to a school shooting. Now, in June 2024, the prosecution charged both Gonzalez and Uvalde School's police chief, Pete Arredondo, I'm sure you remember that name, the on-site commander on the day of the shooting, with multiple counts of endangerment and abandonment of a child. They are not the only officers charged in this case. Both have pleaded not guilty. Arredondo had been charged with 10 felony counts for allegedly endangering the 10 survivors by delaying law enforcement response and not following active shooter protocols. Arredondo and Gonzalez were charged at the same time, but Gonzalez will be facing trial first and alone. Arredondo's case has been delayed indefinitely by an ongoing federal lawsuit filed after the U.S. Border Patrol refused repeated efforts by Uvalde prosecutors to interview Border Patrol agents who responded to the shooting, including 2 who were in the tactical unit responsible for killing the gunman at the school. Each count carries a maximum of 2 years in prison, though judges and jurors in Texas have broad discretion in imposing sentences, according to a criminal law professor at the University of Houston Law Center. The professor went on to weigh in that, quote, "There's a lot of different ways that this could go. All the children who were so horrifically unalived, that would seem to motivate a longer sentence for anyone who is found to have some fault." Now, the reasoning for prosecutors going for the child endangerment law to prosecute against Gonzalez, they stated because this is used to more commonly prosecute negligent parents or caretakers responsible for things like leaving a child in a hot car or without supervision at a beach. The law has rarely been used against police officers, experts noted, because of the difficulty in proving they had a legal obligation of the children. The critical issue here is whether the individual has a duty to act. According to a Houston-based defense attorney, prosecutors will need to establish that Gonzalez had a legal duty, not just a moral obligation, to intervene, and that he failed to follow his training for active shooter scenarios. This defense attorney went on to give insight, saying that the jury is going to have the nasty task of looking through some horrible things to determine if he had the duty to act, referencing evidence such as body cam footage and frantic 911 calls from the shooting. Legal experts who spoke with the news also stated that Gonzalez's role as a responding officer, not the commander or case agent at the scene, could make it tough to convince the jury the man's conduct amounted to a crime. If prosecutors can secure a conviction in this case, it would mark the first time that a police officer has been held accountable for how they carried out their duties at a mass shooting to which they responded. Adrian Gonzalez's defense attorneys are saying that he's being unfairly scapegoated for a crime he didn't commit and that he did all he could do to save and rescue children who were in imminent danger. A defense attorney said those precious souls were stolen by a monster that day, but that monster was not Adrian Gonzalez. He was there, he was present, he was going into danger. And so the narrative of the government is something we're going to contest highly, and that's going to be the point of contention before this jury. Now, every single one of these types of cases where you have a mass shooting is horrible, and especially when it's such young children. And I remember this one so vividly affecting me because at that time, my daughter was the same age as all these children that were primarily affected in one of the classrooms. And I just couldn't help but think of that during this, and thinking of them now. A lot of these kids would be ready to graduate from 8th grade this summer and moving into high school. And all of that was taken away from them. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of emotions this week and over the next 2 weeks as all of this is brought back up again. Let me know what you think below. And thank you as always for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.